The late afternoon sun hung low in the sky, draping the park in shades of amber and gold. The air carried the chatter of families, the barking of dogs, and the distant laughter of children chasing after bubbles. At the far end of the path, just by the tall black iron gates, sat a small figure on a worn-out wooden stool. Her scarf, bright and floral, wrapped snugly around her head, covering the baldness that marked months of chemotherapy. Her name was Lily, just 14 years old, though her eyes carried a maturity no child should have to bear. Before her was a makeshift display board, patched together from old wood her father had collected. Spread neatly across it were paintings and sketches, each one a burst of color and imagination. Watercolors of blue skies and green meadows, pencil sketches of birds in flight, and drawings of children holding hands under the rain. They weren't perfect by professional standards, but they had something rarer: soul. Every brushstroke was filled with a longing, with a kind of fragile hope that clung to Lily's heart. Beside her stool sat a glass jar. It wasn't large, but it was heavy with meaning. A few dollar bills, crumpled and folded, were tucked inside along with coins that clinked whenever someone added to it. That jar was more than just money, it was her lifeline. Each coin, each note, was a step closer to the treatments she needed, treatments her family could no longer afford on their own. Lily sat quietly, clutching her sketchbook in one hand and a worn paintbrush in the other, her voice soft as she whispered to people passing by. "Handmade art, $5 each." Most didn't hear her. Some glanced down with fleeting interest, their eyes darting back up just as quickly, feet carrying them past. A few smiled politely without stopping, and every now and then someone bent down, picked a painting, and dropped a bill in the jar. Each time, Lily's eyes lit up, and her lips curved into a grateful smile that seemed too big for her small, tired face. A woman with a stroller paused briefly, leaning down to admire a painting of a sunflower field. "These are beautiful," she said kindly, selecting one and slipping $5 into the jar. Lily thanked her quietly, her voice almost a whisper. The woman smiled back and walked away, her baby giggling at the colors. Moments like that were the small victories that kept Lily going. She knew she couldn't expect everyone to care, but when someone did, it warmed her fragile heart. Still, the hours dragged on, and the jar filled slowly. The bills barely reached the halfway mark, the coins scattered at the bottom like little raindrops. Lily tried not to think about how far she still had to go. She focused instead on the act of painting, the way colors bled into each other, the way her brush seemed to give life to things she couldn't say out loud. As she worked, an elderly woman shuffled by, her gray hair tucked under a knitted hat. She stopped, studying the display carefully. Her eyes landed on a small sketch of daisies in a mason jar. She picked it up and smiled. "This one feels like spring," she said warmly, placing a $10 bill into the jar though the price was only $5. She reached out and patted Lily's hand gently. "For your bravery, dear. Keep painting." Lily's eyes watered, but she held the tears back, nodding with a grateful smile. "Thank you, ma'am," she whispered. The woman walked away, and Lily hugged the sketchbook to her chest for a moment, breathing deeply. Small kindnesses like that gave her strength. But as the sun sank lower, fatigue began to set in. The laughter of children in the park blurred into the background. Lily's arms ached from holding her sketchbook. Her head felt heavy, and she fought the dizziness that often came after long days in the open air. Her father had offered to stay with her, but she insisted on being alone. She didn't want people to feel sorry for her because of the way he hovered. She wanted them to see her art, not her illness. A group of teenagers passed by, whispering to one another. One of them snickered, pointing at the jar. Lily felt a pang of embarrassment, but she kept her gaze fixed on her brushes, pretending not to hear. She had grown used to stares, to pity, to judgment. What mattered was that she didn't give up. The crowd began to thin as the evening approached. Lily considered packing up her paintings, her body already yearning for rest. She carefully gathered a few sketches, stacking them neatly, when suddenly, the air around her seemed to change. The footsteps that stopped in front of her stall weren't hurried or careless. They were deliberate, calm. A shadow fell over her small display, and Lily slowly looked up. Her breath caught in her throat. The man standing there was tall, dressed in a tailored navy blue suit that contrasted against the casual park-goers around him. A pair of dark sunglasses rested on his face, though the sharp lines of his jaw and the slight silver in his hair made him instantly recognizable. People nearby started whispering, their eyes widening, some even pulling out their phones discreetly. Lily knew that face. She had seen it on television, in glossy magazines her mother used to read, on the news during fundraisers and corporate announcements. His name was Daniel Sterling, a billionaire, one of the wealthiest men in the country, and someone whose reputation for philanthropy often made headlines. He had funded hospitals, built schools, and saved struggling businesses. But what was he doing here, in this park, at her tiny stall? Daniel Sterling didn't speak right away. His gaze was fixed on one of her paintings, a watercolor of a little girl standing in a meadow, her arms stretched upward toward the sun. He bent down slightly, lifting it carefully as though it were something fragile. For a moment, his usually unreadable face softened. His brows furrowed, his lips pressing into a line as though the painting had reached into a part of him he rarely allowed others to see. Lily's heart pounded in her chest. She tried to find her voice, but the words tangled in her throat. She clutched her sketchbook tighter, her small fingers trembling. Finally, Daniel looked at her. His voice was calm but steady when he asked, "Did you paint this?" The world around Lily seemed to go silent. Lily's lips parted, but her voice came out barely above a whisper. "Yes, I painted it." Her hands tightened around the sketchbook on her lap, as though it were the only anchor keeping her steady. Daniel Sterling studied her quietly, then glanced at the glass jar beside her stool. The sight of a few crumpled bills and scattered coins seemed to linger in his gaze longer than it should have. He shifted his eyes back to the painting, the image of the little girl reaching toward the sun, and then back to Lily herself, the frailty in her frame, the scarf covering her bald head, the courage burning in her tired eyes. "Why are you selling them?" he asked gently. The words hit harder than expected. Lily hesitated, looking down at the sidewalk as though the ground might swallow her shame. She didn't like telling strangers. But something in his tone, soft, almost fatherly, loosened the knot in her throat. I have cancer," she said, her voice breaking just enough for the nearby crowd to catch it. "My parents, they try, but the treatments are expensive. So I paint. I sell them to help. It's all I can do." Silence fell over the small gathering of people who had stopped to watch. Some clutched their shopping bags tighter, others looked away, ashamed at their own helplessness. A few recorded quietly on their phones, but most simply stood frozen, as if time itself had stalled. Daniel Sterling's expression didn't change much, but his eyes darkened with something deep, something personal. He slowly set the painting back down on the wooden board, though his fingers lingered on it a second longer. Then, without a word, he reached into the inside pocket of his suit jacket. Lily blinked, confused. Her heart raced as she watched him pull out a sleek leather checkbook and a silver pen. The scratch of the pen against paper was the only sound in the air, sharp and deliberate. The crowd held their breath. When he finished, he tore the check out carefully, folded it once, and extended it toward her. "For you," he said simply. Lily stared at his hand, unsure if she should take it. Slowly, with trembling fingers, she reached out. The paper felt heavier than it should have, as though it carried more than just ink and numbers. She opened it carefully, her eyes scanning the digits. Her breath caught. 500,000. Her vision blurred as tears welled instantly, spilling down her cheeks before she could stop them. She gasped softly, covering her mouth with one hand, the check trembling in the other. The crowd erupted into shocked whispers, some audible, 500,000, others too stunned to form words. Daniel Sterling crouched down so his eyes met hers directly. His voice was calm, steady, and filled with a warmth that silenced everything else. "This isn't just for your treatment," he said. "It's for your future. You're not going to fight this alone anymore." Lily shook her head, overwhelmed. I can't accept this. It's too much." He interrupted gently, "You already gave me something worth more than this." She looked at him, confused, her tears still falling. Daniel lifted the painting he had been holding earlier, the girl in the meadow reaching for the sun. His fingers brushed over the dried watercolor as though it were sacred. "This," he said softly, "reminds me of my daughter. She loved painting too. She used to sit just like you, sketching everything she saw. But she passed away before she ever had the chance to chase her dreams." His voice faltered just slightly, enough to reveal the wound behind his calm exterior. "When I saw this painting, it was like seeing a piece of her again. You gave me back something I thought I lost forever." The crowd grew even quieter, some wiping their eyes, others bowing their heads. The man everyone thought of as untouchable, as powerful beyond reach, had just exposed his heart to a sick little girl with a jar of coins and a handful of paintings. Lily couldn't find words. She clutched the check to her chest, not for the money itself but for what it represented: hope, a chance, a lifeline she had prayed for but never imagined would come. Daniel stood, his towering figure somehow softer now. He held the painting carefully against his chest, as though protecting it. He placed a hand gently on Lily's shoulder. "Keep painting," he said. "The world needs to see what you create." Her sobs shook her small frame as she nodded, unable to stop crying. The moment didn't just change her life, it touched everyone who witnessed it. Strangers in the crowd pulled out wallets and dropped bills into her jar, not $5 at a time, but 20s, 50s, even hundreds. A woman knelt to hug Lily, whispering words of encouragement. A man clapped his hands once, and soon others joined, a ripple of applause breaking through the silence. Daniel Sterling gave a small nod to his bodyguards, who had been standing silently nearby, then glanced back one last time. He looked at Lily, at the scarf on her head, at the tears shining in her eyes, and smiled softly. "Stay strong," he said, his voice barely audible, but Lily caught it and held it close. Then he turned and walked away, disappearing into the crowd as quickly as he had appeared, leaving behind a story that would spread far beyond the gates of that park. Lily sat frozen, the check pressed against her chest, her jar overflowing now with unexpected generosity from strangers moved by what they had witnessed. Her tears no longer came from despair, but from the overwhelming realization that miracles were real, and one had just walked by her little stall and changed her life forever.